I used to fill my journal with curses, wishing for Silas Thorne to meet a grim end. I had never encountered someone so profoundly duplicitous. That perception held until the moment our private jet began its fatal descent, and Silas pressed the cabin's only parachute into my hands. His smile was one of finality, of release. He told me, "Asher, this is what you always wanted." In that instant, I understood. He had known all along how much I despised him. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the throes of adolescence. This time, I didn't curse Silas. Instead, my journal entries praised him, respected him. I stopped orchestrating little accidents and humiliations for him. But then, late one night, a suffocating pressure woke me. The veins on Silas's arm stood out like cords as his hands tightened around my neck. His smile was a manic, dangerous slash across his face. He demanded to know who I was and ordered me to get out of Asher's body. Silas had entered our lives 7 years prior. His parents, on a trip to visit relatives, had perished in a sudden, tragic fire. The vast corporation they left behind was thrown into chaos, a carcass for vultures to circle. My father, Charles Bloom, owed Silas's father his life and decided to step in, acting as regent to protect the Thorne legacy for the boy. At the time, I was a junior in high school, intrigued by my new foster brother. Silas was sculpted from sharp angles and deep shadows, with intense eyes, a strong, slightly aquiline nose, and full lips. He was also a prodigy. My father mentored him personally, teaching him the ruthless logic of maximizing profit and the subtle art of commanding a boardroom. Silas absorbed it all, not just learning but innovating. Everyone was charmed by him, especially me. Whenever my parents were too busy for parent-teacher conferences, Silas would appear at my prep school, carrying a small box of my favorite dark chocolate lava cakes, his smile warm and genuine. Having a brother that handsome caused a minor sensation. After every conference, girls and even some of the younger female teachers would ask me for his contact information. I confess, my adolescent ego swelled with a borrowed pride. But when did the shift occur? The moment my admiration curdled into an uncontrollable loathing. It was my senior year, just before the Christmas holiday. My friends and I had gotten into a massive snowball fight in Central Park, and I came home with a raging fever. The household staff was away for the holidays, so Silas took it upon himself to care for me. After a year of living together, we had grown close. I let him half carry me to bed, whining and refusing the bitter medicine. I had never seen Silas lose his temper, so even when faced with my childish antics, he just smiled with an indulgent patience, coaxing me until I finally took the medication. It was only natural that I grew to depend on him. Later, after the drug-induced drowsiness wore off, I awoke in the dim room. My first thought was to find Silas. Before I even left the bedroom, the sound of something shattering downstairs made my heart jump. I was afraid he'd hurt himself. But as I pushed the door open a crack, a voice, cool and sharp as ice, drifted up from the living room. Asher Bloom, a spoiled princeling who's only ever known comfort. He's nothing but a liability. If he weren't still useful, I wouldn't give him a second glance. My pupils contracted, my stomach plummeting into a cold void. I couldn't believe those words had come from Silas. A heavy front door slammed shut, signaling someone's departure. I stood there, frozen, for a long moment before my senses returned. Steady footsteps ascended the stairs. When Silas pushed open my door, I was already under the thick comforter, scrolling aimlessly on my phone. In that split second, I made a decision. So, he hated me and was putting on an act? Fine. We would see who was the better actor. The filter through which I saw Silas shattered. I started noticing the 1,000 tiny inconsistencies that proved his hypocrisy. He clearly disliked Clara Sterling, the heiress to the Sterling fortune, yet he played the perfect gentleman, deflecting unwanted advances for her at parties and arranging a private car to take her home. He would outwardly agree with one of my father's business strategies, only to quietly replace it with his own superior plan at the last possible second. And despite having said he couldn't stand me, he insisted on tutoring me, breaking down complex subjects, and helping me study for my finals. Even when my rebellious streak flared and I acted out, he would just smile that placid smile of his. What a fraud. I could see the fist he clenched under the table, knuckles white. I began to take pleasure in tormenting him. To his face, I was the affectionate younger brother. In private, my journal became a torrent of furious judgments and venomous curses. I watched with cynical amusement as smitten girls presented him with homemade pastries, knowing full well his assistant would distribute them among the office staff. Sending Silas baked goods was less effective than feeding them to the stray dogs in the park. One day, I deliberately humiliated him in front of his colleagues. The fury in his eyes was almost imperceptible, but I saw him clench his jaw so hard I thought his teeth would crack. Silas, the master of deceit. 5 years passed. My sporadic critiques evolved into a daily ritual. The day felt incomplete if I hadn't eviscerated him on paper. My collection of journals grew into a thick, damning stack. Then, on Silas's 26th birthday, my father announced his plan to merge our families through a marriage between Silas and Clara Sterling. I expected Silas to refuse. He agreed. That was the first day I wrote it over and over again. Die, Silas. D. The day before the engagement party, a major international deal our team was working on collapsed. My father dispatched me and Silas to salvage it. Due to the urgency, we took the private jet that night. Inside the cabin, we sat in our usual silence on opposite ends of the luxurious space. After we reached cruising altitude, Silas began to act strangely. A faint smile touched his lips, and he started making small talk about trivial things. I shot him a flat look. Was he showing off about his impending marriage? A wave of agitation washed over me. I remained silent, letting him talk to himself. As my thoughts drifted into a chaotic haze, a gunshot exploded next to my ear, the sound so loud it felt like it split my eardrum. In the next second, a sickening feeling of weightlessness consumed me. My eyes instinctively snapped toward the cockpit. The pilot's body was slumped over the controls, a dark stream of blood trickling from his temple. My mind went blank, but my body moved on instinct. To my horror, the emergency supplies, the parachutes, they were gone. As I stood there, paralyzed by shock, Silas grabbed my arm. With swift, efficient movements, he strapped a parachute pack to my back. I grabbed his arm in return, my voice tight. Where was his? Silas, already calculating our altitude, ignored me. He wrenched open the cabin door. A furious wind tore through the fuselage, threatening to rip us apart. I stared at him in disbelief. He had given me the only pack. I yelled at him, asking if he was insane, if he wanted to die. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a thumb-sized USB drive from his pocket and pressed it into my hand. Then, with a sudden, powerful shove, he pushed me out into the roaring emptiness. As I fell, I saw his smile, serene and absolute. He said, "Asher, this is what you always wanted." I landed on the edge of a dense forest. My head spun from where it had clipped a tree branch, but I ignored the pain, my fingers trembling as I fumbled for my phone to call for rescue. While I waited, I plugged the drive Silas had given me into my phone. It was filled with encrypted files. As I scanned through them, my eyes widened in horror. All the evidence pointed to my father. Charles Bloom was directly connected to the death of Silas's parents. He had orchestrated their demise to absorb the Thorn Corporation. The final document contained Silas's own suspicions. He had been secretly building his own power base, but he believed my father had noticed and felt threatened. Silas had anticipated that something like this would happen. At the end of the file, he had written a single question. "Asher, will you help me find the truth?" My mind refused to process it. The Charles Bloom I knew could never be that person. I clenched my jaw and struggled to my feet. I couldn't break down here. I had to get out to find the truth for Silas. I hadn't made it more than a few yards when another gunshot echoed from behind me. A searing pain erupted in my chest. In the slow-motion collapse of my world, I fought to turn my head. I could just make out the glint of a pistol engraved with an eagle emblem before everything went dark. As my consciousness faded, an image of Silas's face filled my mind. The person I had deemed a master of lies had given me his life. What did that make me? I opened my eyes, assuming I had been rescued. But the sight of my own torn-up AP exam papers scattered across my desk told a different story. I slowly realized I was back in my old bedroom. The familiar layout, the view from the window reflecting a much younger, softer version of my face. My gaze fell on a bright red journal on my desk. I reached for it, my hand unsteady, and flipped to the most recent entry. July 17, 2035. I got accepted to NYU. I was 18 again. I instinctively flipped backward. The pages were dense with 6 months of accumulated hatred for Silas. Looking at the childishly angry words with the perspective of a 24-year-old, I couldn't help but let out a dry, bitter laugh. In the language of online fandoms, I wasn't just a hater. I was a toxic stan, singularly obsessed. But since I had a second chance, I would uncover the real truth. I left my room to find my father, but ran into a familiar figure in the hallway. Silas. What was he doing here? Then it came back to me. After I got my acceptance letter, my father had suggested I move into Silas's apartment, which was much closer to campus. Silas, of course, had agreed. I, however, had refused. Who would want to live with someone they despised? Looking back, that was probably the moment Silas first suspected I truly disliked him. This time, as he prepared to leave, I called out his name. I told him I'd changed my mind and that I wanted to live with him. Silas froze for a second, then a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. Of course, studying the expression on this younger Silas, I shook my head internally. I could read him like a book now. He surely thought this was just another one of my whims, that I would last 2 days before storming out. I said nothing more, choosing to let my actions speak for me. The next day, Silas realized something was amiss. His impeccably minimalist, cold apartment had been invaded by warm-toned furniture and sprawling green plants. When he pushed open the door to his bedroom, he stopped short. I was on his bed in a long white t-shirt, rolling around and cheering at my phone as a teammate scored a pentakill in a mobile game. His gaze lingered for a moment on my bare legs before he looked away. He asked me why I was in his room when there was a perfectly good guest room. Without looking up, I informed him I had converted it into a gaming den. Silas was speechless for a moment, then let out a resigned sigh. After we turned off the lights, Silas, fresh from a shower and wrapped in a silk robe, got into the other side of the king-sized bed. We lay back to back, the space between us a silent battlefield. After a while, his breathing evened out into the rhythm of sleep. I turned over and quietly scooted closer. I used to love the scent that clung to him. I'd even asked him what cologne he wore, but he said he never used any. During the time we were close, I would often drape myself over him just to inhale the subtle fragrance from the nape of his neck. Counting the years from my past life, it had been almost 7 since I had last smelled it. I carefully pulled at his robe, my nose twitching, until that pleasant, woody fragrance filled my senses. I closed my eyes, feeling a profound and inexplicable sense of peace, completely unaware that beneath the robe, every muscle in his body was coiled tight. Once classes started, I arranged to be a commuter student. With the experience of my past life, I navigated the initial chaos of freshman year with ease, leaving me with plenty of free time. After class, I went straight to a new bar my friend had opened. I handed Leo Grant a sketch I'd made. He took the paper and studied it thoughtfully. I didn't rush him. Among my circle, Leo's family had connections in every corner of the city, both legitimate and illicit. If he couldn't trace the eagle emblem, then the situation was more serious than I imagined. Thankfully, word came back that it was traceable. I breathed a sigh of relief and thanked him. Leo was discreet. He never asked questions he wasn't supposed to. He just asked how college was and what my next plan was for making Silas's life difficult. He was the only one who knew about my one-sided feud. I hesitated, trying to find the right words. I asked him, hypothetically, if someone who hated him suddenly started being nice, what would he think? Leo didn't miss a beat. He figured they either wanted something from him or were planning to screw him over. Since people rarely ask favors of their enemies, he'd lean toward the latter. A dark cloud formed over my head. In Silas's eyes, I was probably plotting some kind of masterstroke. On a whim, I decided to visit Silas. He was only 20 now, still young and inexperienced. My father had put him in charge of a subsidiary to, as he put it, get experience at the ground level. I'd never visited him at work in my previous life. Inside the Bentley, I scowled as I sketched out a plan on my tablet. First, hire a renowned private investigator to look into the real cause of the Thorne couple's death. Second, have moles inside the company investigate whether my father was truly trying to seize control of their corporation. After outlining the initial steps, I stared out the window at the receding cityscape. In my past life, I thought I was the only one who truly understood Silas, the only one who could see the truth behind his benevolent mask. But after the crash, after facing death, I realized I didn't know him at all. I found Silas's office without much trouble, carrying a container of takeout. Before I could knock, I overheard voices from inside. I had only known that my father had assigned Silas a promising green energy tech company, but I never knew he had faced such a major crisis so early on. Standing by the door, I listened as his secretary gave him a report. I quickly pieced it together. After the subsidiary won a major public bid, an anonymous complaint was filed with the regulatory agency, accusing Silas of bid rigging. If he couldn't prove his innocence, the company's reputation would be destroyed, jeopardizing all their current and future projects. The shocking part was that Silas had traced the whistleblower to an employee within our own parent company, Bloom Enterprises. Because it was an internal complaint, the authorities were taking it very seriously. I frowned. Any fool could see the accusation pointed straight back at my father. Before I could process it, I heard the secretary's footsteps approaching the door. I quickly ducked around the corner to the elevator bank, pretending I had just arrived. Silas's secretary had seen me a few times. He looked surprised but offered a polite smile. He asked what the young master was doing here. I held up the lunch container, explaining I was bringing my brother some food. I hadn't come on a whim. In my past life, I'd accidentally learned from our family doctor that Silas suffered from stomach problems. At the time, I'd thought it was karma. But now I owed him my life. Helping him manage his health was the least I could do. With that thought, I pushed open his office door without ceremony and shoved the container in front of him. Time to eat. Silas started, his eyes falling to the elegantly packaged meal. His eyelids lowered, hiding his inscrutable thoughts. My arm was getting tired. My mind raced with insecurities. Based on his last words before he died, he had probably read my journal. Even though I had only been writing bad things for 6 months at this point, he must have sensed my dislike. My showing up with lunch now. He must think I was up to something, especially after what Leo had said. I imagined him refusing the food, or worse, asking me what my scheme was before throwing it in my face. My palms started to sweat. Suddenly, Silas moved. His long, elegant fingers closed around the container. A perfectly polite smile graced his lips. He said, "Asher, thank you for the lunch." I was momentarily stunned, then looked away awkwardly. It was true then. If Silas was willing to give me the parachute, maybe he didn't hate me as much as I thought. A flash of insight struck me. Maybe when he said he hated me, he'd been forced to. I pursed my lips, making a snap decision to go home and search for the security footage from that day. I told him to make sure he ate it and that I had to go. I left in a hurry, not noticing the flicker of disappointment in Silas's eyes or the self-deprecating smile that followed. Downstairs, waiting for my car, I subconsciously touched my right earlobe and realized the new earring I'd bought was gone. I retraced my steps in my mind. It must have fallen off in Silas's office. Seeing the driver was still a few minutes out, I decided to go back up. This time, I walked confidently to his office door. A familiar voice drifted through the crack. It was the secretary, asking Silas in a puzzled tone why the young master, who clearly disliked him, would suddenly show up with lunch. He asked if it might be some kind of scheme and whether he should intercept me next time. Tell me Silas wasn't in. I clenched my lips, a strange discomfort settling in my chest. First, because even the secretary could see my true feelings, which meant Silas must have known for ages that I hated him. Second, I was afraid Silas would agree with the suggestion. My fists tightened. If he dared to have me turned away. Before I could barge in, I heard Silas's calm voice. Don't. He's not a bad person at heart. Just let him be. I didn't go back for the earring. I fled. Back at home, I tried not to think too hard about it. If someone had constantly sabotaged me, found fault with everything I did, and wrote daily in a journal about wanting me dead, I'd be merciful not to have them thrown into the ocean. Why was Silas so calm about it? So calm it made me feel ashamed. I shook my head, clearing the tangled thoughts. I found the head butler, Mr. Henderson, and asked for the security backups for the main house. The system automatically backed everything up and kept the footage for 6 months. Barring any tampering, the camera in the great room should have captured who Silas was talking to that day. Could be a major breakthrough. After the butler gave me the data, I retreated to my room with my laptop. Although I had prepared for the worst, the possibility of the footage being altered, I was still disappointed to find the files corrupted. After some futile attempts to fix it myself, I gave up. As a last resort, I contacted a well-known hacker who specialized in data recovery. The price was steep, $200,000. After sending the files, I resignedly shut my laptop. At the entrance of our Long Island estate, I ran into Mr. Peterson, my father's executive assistant, who was there to pick up some documents. An idea sparked. I casually started asking about the subsidiary Silas was managing, trying to fish for information. But Mr. Peterson reported that everything was normal. Silas hadn't reported any problems to headquarters. He then looked at me shrewdly and asked if I had discovered something. I quickly denied it, saying I was just curious to see how my father's protege was faring after all this time. Mr. Peterson's expression became one of knowing understanding. He patted me on the shoulder conspiratorially. I get it. Don't you worry, he can't hold a candle to you. You don't have to see him as a threat. You're the one Mr. Bloom truly values. I was completely floored. So even he could see it. In my past life, I was apparently the only one who thought my acting was flawless enough to fool everyone. I closed my eyes, exhausted. I made him promise not to tell my father I'd been asking about it. Having always been spoiled by those around me, making such demands came naturally. Once he agreed, I relaxed slightly. In my past life, I never even knew about the bid rigging complaint. My father probably didn't either. It seemed Silas had handled it on his own. In that case, I couldn't act rashly. If Silas became suspicious of me, clearing my own name would be that much harder. When I got back to the apartment after a night out with friends, it was completely dark. Silas had already turned in. I pouted, tiptoeing to the bathroom. This was another thing that annoyed me about him in my past life. Our completely misaligned schedules. While I was out clubbing, Silas was already living the life of a retiree, drinking goji berry tea, soaking his feet, and adhering to a strict early-to-bed, early-to-rise routine. He had warned me twice not to take my youth for granted and wreck my health. I hadn't listened. I had planned to wait for his third before grudgingly complying, just so I could complain to everyone about how overbearing he was. But the third never came. I was so incensed at the time that I first vented my fury in a dozen journal entries, then went on a clubbing spree every night until my father finally dragged me home. Thinking back on it, I felt more and more like a deranged anti-fan. After my shower, I turned on the small, cat-shaped lamp I'd brought and sat at Silas's desk to write in my journal. I had torn out all the old, hateful pages. Staring at the blank paper, I chewed on the end of my pen, tilted my head, and awkwardly wrote down my first sentence of praise for Silas. November 5th, 2035. Silas is a very, very good person. Life continued as normal. Silas quietly resolved his business crisis, and I continued to make my presence felt, popping up at random times. I ignored the fleeting looks of suspicion and confusion from Silas and acted as I always had in the beginning, pestering him and being playfully affectionate. At the same time, mindful of the possibility that he might read my journal, I filled it with daily praise, writing about what a wonderful, admirable older brother he was. As the winter solstice approached, I bundled up against the cold, my breath fogging in the air as I pushed open the door to a small bakery. I didn't emerge until dusk, furtively carrying a box to my car. Back at the apartment, I decorated the living room and then began bombarding Silas with a series of increasingly dramatic texts. Hey, my head hurts so much. Can someone please pay attention to this poor soul who might have a fever? Don't you dare pretend you don't see this. After a dozen such messages, Silas finally replied with a terse, back in 10. So soon? I scrambled up, teleporting to my room to grab the props I'd ordered online. My phone buzzed. Silas's car was entering the underground garage. I glanced around, switched off all the lights, and hid behind the front door, clutching a party popper. His familiar footsteps grew closer. I held my breath, counting down. 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday! As colorful streamers rained down, I looked through the fluttering confetti at Silas, whose eyes had widened slightly. I grinned. Well, aren't you surprised? He remained silent for a long moment. Finally, he said that today was not his birthday. I knew that, of course. But every year on the solstice, the extended Thorn family demanded Silas return to their ancestral home for a dreary gathering. I huffed impatiently, pulling him inside and presenting the cake I had made myself. Come on, make a wish. Silas complied, and as he blew out the candles, I started humming the birthday song, excited to cut the cake. Suddenly, Silas looked at me, his gaze fixed, an emotion in his eyes I couldn't decipher. His voice was calm. Asher, what do you want? I can give it to you directly. You don't have to go to all this trouble to flatter me. My cheerful movements froze. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice, making it hard to speak. So that was it. All this time, he had assumed I had an ulterior motive. If the old me had heard those words, I would have flown into a rage, smashed the cake on the floor, and stormed out. But I wasn't the old me anymore. I forked a piece of cake and shoved it into Silas's mouth. What are you mumbling about? As he started to swallow the sweet confectionery and open his mouth to speak, I defiantly held up my hand right in front of his face. I got several blisters on my fingers making this cake this afternoon. I'm in this much pain, and you don't even feel sorry for me. You just come back and say things that make a person want to die. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I demanded he blow on them. Distracted, Silas didn't bring up the topic again. But before I could feel smug, his eyes fell to my blisters, and his brow furrowed. He said blowing on them wouldn't help. They needed to be lanced with a needle. My smile froze on my face. Was he serious? I snatched my hand back, retreating a step. I wasn't overreacting. In my past life, I'd gone through phases of basketball and rock climbing, which meant I was constantly bruised. Whenever Silas saw a new contusion, he would massage it with medicinal balm to speed up the healing. While the bruises faded quickly, it was excruciatingly painful. Perhaps the shadow of that past trauma lingered, because before bed, when Silas approached me with a sterilized needle, my panic grew. For a fleeting moment, I had a vision from some old, terrifying medical drama. Nurse Ratched was standing before me. I swallowed hard, squeezed my eyes shut, and offered my hand as if to the executioner. But nothing happened. I peeked through one eye. Silas was staring at my face, a gentle smile playing on his lips that he didn't seem to be aware of. I was mesmerized. Silas had the classic, sharp beauty of an old painting. When his intense, almond-shaped eyes focused on you, it was easy to fall under the illusion that you were deeply loved. I quickly looked away, flustered, letting him tend to my blisters. I had intended to be brave, but it hurt too much. I couldn't help but let out a low cry of pain, especially when he disinfected the wounds. I whined that it hurt, begging him to be gentler. A tear escaped the corner of my eye as I looked at him pitifully. It wasn't an act. The pain was real. Silas said nothing, but he quickened his pace, his touch becoming lighter. When he finally finished bandaging my fingers, before I could even thank him, he went straight into the bathroom to shower. Hearing the heavy sound of his breathing, I thought for a moment and decided to open a window. The cold winter air could easily make the room feel stuffy. My fingertips still throbbed with a dull ache. I collapsed onto the bed, distracting myself by scrolling through my phone. Soon I was laughing so hard I was hitting the mattress, which only made my hand hurt more. Just as I was recovering, a message popped up from the hacker. "Boss, the security footage has been successfully restored." My focus sharpened instantly. I glanced at the bathroom. The sound of the shower was a steady hum. I put on my headphones and played the video. The footage showed a normal scene in our great room until 3 or 4 armed bodyguards in black suits walked in brazenly. A middle-aged man sat down, his gaze falling on Silas, who stood nearby. He asked how things were progressing. Even after the hacker's expert restoration, the audio was faint. I held my breath and turned up the volume. Soon, I was able to piece together the conversation. The man was Silas's uncle, Marcus Thorne. He was convinced that my father, Charles Bloom, was the true murderer of Silas's parents. Marcus was there to remind Silas of his duty, to bide his time, endure the humiliation, and one day not only reclaim the Thorne Corporation but also swallow the Bloom family empire whole. Silas's expression was unreadable as he murmured his assent. Marcus seemed pleased. As he was leaving, he suddenly asked if it was true Silas had grown close to the Bloom boy. He wondered if Silas would hesitate when the time came to destroy the family. Even through the screen, I could feel the veiled threat. A moment later, I heard Silas's voice deliver the exact words I had overheard in my previous life. Everything clicked into place. A few days ago, Leo had sent me an update. The eagle emblem was the logo of a new international arms syndicate founded by an American of Chinese descent. He couldn't dig up any more than that. It had to be Marcus. He was the one who had tried to kill me in my past life. On the private jet, Silas must have sensed something was wrong and gave me the only chance of survival. But Silas hadn't anticipated that Marcus would have men waiting on the ground to finish the job. After all, I was the sole Bloom heir. It all made sense. Marcus had framed my father to cover his own ambitions. Building an arms syndicate required a colossal amount of capital. When Silas came out of the shower, I lay staring at the dark ceiling. I asked him, what if someone you trusted, someone you were closest to, betrayed you? What would you do? Silas's breathing stopped for a beat. He turned his head, his bright eyes tracing my silhouette in the dark. He said it would depend on what they lied about. I grew anxious. Silas couldn't be this soft. If he was really considering forgiving his black-hearted uncle, then my life and my family's entire future were at risk. I said nothing more, my mind already racing with a new plan. I began to move in secret. I frequently contacted the private investigator, urging him to find conclusive evidence quickly. I used Leo's network to trace the syndicate's main base of operations and uncover some of their more unsavory dealings. Finally, I compiled all the evidence, making sure every piece was irrefutable. Right now, Marcus's power and influence were nothing compared to what they had become in my past life. He was still in his growth phase. If I could crush him now, I wouldn't wait. Using my demanding course load as an excuse, I started leaving earlier and coming home later. The following spring, the news broke like a thunderclap, shocking the nation. The 3-year-old case of the couple who died in a fire was reopened. The true culprit was revealed to be the wife's own brother, who had harbored a long-standing grudge. A certain Mr. Thorne, an entrepreneur, was also indicted for $200 million in tax evasion and the illegal trafficking of massive quantities of military-grade weapons. The internet was flooded with reports. Marcus Thorne was arrested abroad and imprisoned. My father, still reeling from having his name cleared, officially handed control of the Thorne Corporation back to Silas. I asked him later what the real reason was for returning it. He admitted he had long suspected there were traitors within the company but could never pinpoint the source. With his own company to run, he simply didn't have the resources for a full-scale investigation. But to pass on such a mess to a younger man, he said, would have been a disgrace. In my past life, because Marcus was never exposed, my father had held onto the company for much longer. I finally understood. No wonder he had gotten so many gray hairs and sighed so much in his later years. The rot in the company must have been spreading. He was just too proud to admit he couldn't handle it. Silas and I hadn't seen each other in 2 months. The night before the news broke, I had moved out of his apartment. I figured he needed time and space to himself. To find out your trusted uncle was the one who truly betrayed you, that would be devastating for anyone. Besides, Silas was now the CEO of a major corporation. He was probably swamped. I knew my place. It was better not to bother him. I owed him a life from our last go-around. In this one, I gave him the truth. We were even. Just as I was planning to move my things out of his apartment for good and buy a place near campus, my father summoned me home. His tone was serious. I thought something terrible had happened and rushed back, only to find Silas sitting across from my father, the two of them enjoying a game of chess. My father finally noticed me. Asher, Komein. We're celebrating Silas's official appointment as CEO of the Thorne Corporation. So, that's what this was. From the moment I walked in, Silas's gaze was fixed on me, heavy and silent. I awkwardly avoided his eyes. I mean, yes, I had done all of this behind his back, but I deserved some CR, didn't I? I had nothing to feel guilty about. After dinner, my father insisted Silas stay the night, and I wasn't allowed to leave either. He lamented that once we were fully independent, getting us home would be a challenge. He put an arm around me, asking if I didn't want to stay and keep him company for a night. The emotional blackmail was thick. I quickly shook my head, saying of course I did. Satisfied, he clapped my shoulder and told us brothers to have a good chat, then disappeared into his study to work. Silas and I were left standing there, looking at each other. Honestly, now that my last life's mission was complete, I had no idea how to act around him. After a few stilted exchanges, I fled to my room. Late that night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind started to dissect my feelings for Silas. I could admit that in the very beginning, I had adored him. The later hatred was born from a misunderstanding, a wounded pride. As that loathing deepened, it seemed to twist my other emotions along with it. I slowly realized that just as Silas had mixed genuine care into his facade of indifference, I had hidden a stubborn love within my web of resentment. The air in the room felt still. I think I was in love with Silas. I must have drifted off, because I woke to a powerful feeling of suffocation. My vision was blurry, doubling, but I could make out a figure leaning over me, hands clamped around my throat. I struggled desperately, my face flushing hot. In my panic, my hand hit the switch on my bedside lamp. The room was flooded with light. I stared up in disbelief at the man on top of me. Silas. After a fit of coughing, I croaked out, asking if he was insane. Silas's eyes were dark pools of madness, his smile terrifying. He said, without preamble, that no matter who I was, I had to get out of Asher's body. Was he seriously unhinged? Enraged, I used every ounce of strength I had to shove him off me, then scrambled on top of him, pinning him down. I slapped him hard across the face, twice. I screamed at him, asking what the hell was wrong with him. The slaps seemed to stun him back to some semblance of reality. He murmured that I wasn't him. The real Asher would never praise him in his journal, would never be so kind. Silas had grown accustomed to being disliked. It was fine as long as he could stay near Asher, see him from time to time. But then Asher had changed, become unpredictable. In the ensuing storm of suspicion and confusion, Silas had grown paranoid. And after 2 months of silence, his worst fear had solidified into a conviction. This wasn't his Asher anymore. I should have known. Silas had realized I used to hate him. But who could have guessed that 2 months apart would drive him completely mad? I took a deep breath and decided to turn the tables. I demanded to know if he wasn't the one who said he hated me first. A look of confusion crossed his face. As I reminded him of the incident, he finally remembered. He started to explain, but I pressed my fingers to his lips, manually silencing him. Then, in a rush, I told him everything. From the day I overheard him, to my adolescent need to compete, to see which of us could keep up the act longer. But then, thinking of our last moments on that plane, I lowered my gaze to the man beneath me. Silas, I said, all this hating is pointless. Let's try a different game. And with that, I crushed my mouth against his. His body went rigid. Then he responded with an even greater force. The room was silent except for our breathing. The faint taste of blood was on my tongue. We were kissing in the wounds we'd given each other. My fingers brushed against something warm and wet on his cheek. He grabbed my hand tightly. Asher, you're not playing with me, are you? Looking down at his wretched expression, I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. What kind of idiot pays with his first kiss just to play a prank? I pinched his cheek, which had surprisingly little give. I promised him I would never hate him again. Silas stared at me, his eyes wide. After a long moment, he whispered back, "Don't hate me. Please love me a little more." We were together for 2 years. As graduation approached, I overheard some gossip that my father was setting Silas up on a blind date with Clara Sterling. I stormed back to the family estate and went full demon child mode. I didn't waste any words. "Dad, I'm gay." My father, who was sipping tea, nearly choked. He sputtered, asking if I knew what I was saying. I nodded calmly. "I know. And I forgot to tell you, my boyfriend is Silas. We've been together for 2 years. So you can stop introducing him to other people." The sheer volume of information seemed to short-circuit his brain. He stared at me, his finger trembling as he pointed. "If you two don't get married, what about children?" "That's easy," I said, pulling out a copy of his latest physical exam report. "You're only 48. The doctor says you're perfectly capable of having another one." The silence in the room was absolute. Then, choosing between a calm lecture and a heart attack, my father opted for a third option. He grabbed the nearest slipper and chased me around the room, screaming that I was an ungrateful child. I left the house, my body aching from the repeated thrashings, and went to find Silas for a nice dinner. When he heard I had come out to my father, he was shocked, his eyes full of concern. I waved it off, not mentioning the beating. I told him not to worry, that my dad knew how stubborn I was and would eventually come around. Besides, arranged marriages were about business value. I was bringing the ultimate asset, Silas, into the family. It was a win-win. My father should be secretly thrilled. The next morning, a pensive Silas opened Excel and began drafting a list of betrothal gifts to present to my father as a formal apology. I, woken from a deep sleep, yanked him back into bed, grumbling. I advised him not to go near the house for at least 2 months. He didn't understand why. I paused for a moment. They're trying for a second baby. The atmosphere in the room instantly shifted. As a small act of revenge for waking me up on a weekend, I pulled the covers over his head and asked politely, "Honey, should we try too?" Silas's face turned bright red. The health-conscious part of his brain took over for a second. He stammered that I'd said I was sore last night and that we'd already done it 3 times today, so maybe we should practice some restraint. That was exactly what I was waiting for. I agreed that he was absolutely right, and we should sleep in separate rooms for the next 2 months. Then I rolled over and went back to sleep. Silas, exiled to the metaphorical cold palace, was dumbfounded. But he didn't wake me. Instead, he gently tucked the blanket around me, murmuring that I needed to keep my stomach covered. Hearing his soft voice, my closed eyes unexpectedly stung with tears. I thought, in this life, Silas and I would have endless conversations left to have. That day, I opened the journal I hadn't touched in a long time. On the last page, a new sentence had been added in an unfamiliar hand. "My love, don't hate me. Please love me.